Hey, my daughter's sleeping, so I'm gonna just do this video that I've been putting off for a long time. I want to talk about her birth and being in the NICU for the first 10 or 11 days of her life, and how that was. So I'm just gonna start. So basically, I was a high-risk pregnancy. I got labeled that pretty early because there was high protein levels in my urine at one of my checkups with my midwife. And they told me, I was like, what does that mean? And they were like, basically it just means that you're at risk for preeclampsia, and that means you could, go into preterm labor, aka have her before her due date. So I almost was expecting to hear something like that because my own mom had preeclampsia when she had me, and I was an emergency C-section. I think I was past my due date, but I was an emergency C-section when she had me. She was in labor for over 20 hours and then just wasn't happening. The umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck, so they had to do an emergency C-section, get me out, and then my mom went into toxic shock. So she had a rough birth with me. She thought she was gonna die, and and it was scary for her. She lost a lot of blood. Yeah, so knowing that, I kind of expected something ish like that. Yeah. My midwives assured me that wasn't really anything to worry about. They knew it, so they're like, okay, well, we know that that's in your history. They didn't really want to alarm me because they were like, chances are you'll be fine. So I just had this inner knowing that I was gonna go into labor before Maeve's due date. I didn't know how soon, but her due date was February 8th, and I ended up having her January 11th. Hey girl. You can go back to sleep if you want. No. So basically what happened is on January 10th, 2014, I was in the realm of doing kick counts every day to see how much she was moving. She was typically within a minute or two she would have I forget how many, 10 kicks or something. I don't know. I forget what it was. I'm far removed from the whole pregnancy thing now. She's 4 years old, but however many kicks you had to count in whatever time, it was usually pretty quick. So on January 10th, it was a Friday, I was doing her kick counts, and I mean, it still was pretty quick in reference to normal people, but for her it was really slow, and it kind of put up a red flag in my head, and I was like, why isn't she moving as much as normal? So I went to sleep that night kind of a little bit worried. Not so much that I felt like I had to call someone, but I was definitely fuck, if this happens again tomorrow, I'm calling my midwife. Something's different, So I went to sleep, and about 4 or 5 times that night during my sleep, I woke up with really bad cramps, and they would go away as soon as I peed. So I would like get out of bed, pee, and then they would basically subside. Now, separately, I have come to learn that I have a very high pain tolerance, so I don't really know. Okay, so I don't really know if I can say that I trust myself fully with my own pain, like, association, if I'm making any sense. So I was thinking, like, oh, it's not a big deal, it feels like period cramps. But my typical period cramps are like hell on earth. So, yeah, that probably was, that was this, I mean, looking back on it now, that was the start of labor. I was in labor that night, and I didn't even know it. The next morning, I woke up, I felt a little nauseous. I couldn't really eat anything. I had a newborn care class to go to at the hospital that I was delivering at. So my husband was actually sick that day too. So I was like, you know what, you're sick, like, I'll just go to this by myself. It'll be fine. So I drove myself to the hospital, sat through the newborn care class, learned how to, like, change a diaper, which I had never done in my life before that. I'd always been very uncomfortable holding babies, very uncomfortable around babies in general. So I feel like this newborn care class was like, I needed to take it kind of thing. So it ended. I drove myself back home. I was starving at this point, so I made myself some rice, started to eat it, and then I was sitting there eating it, and I started what I thought was Braxton Hicks, and I was like, all right, well, I'm having like a lot of them though. They weren't really painful. Like, I can't say that they were painful. They were just like, my stomach was contracting. If you're pregnant, you know what I mean by the Braxton Hicks. Your stomach just tenses, and then it stops, and then it does it again. But it was happening a lot, so I was like, all right, maybe I should just, like, time them just to make sure that they're not, you know, close together because of, like, the shit that happened the night before. So I timed them, and I had 6 of them in an hour, and that was, like, supposed to be, like, if you had 6 contractions in an hour, you were to call your midwife because you could be going into, like, labor type deal. So I called my midwife, told her, and she was like, well, you're still 4 weeks away. Like, I was literally 36 weeks exactly on that day, that Saturday, January 11th. And she was like, I don't know, it's pretty early. She was like, why don't you drink 2 liters of water, take a warm bath, see if that helps relax everything, and monitor your contractions. If you still have another 6 in an hour, then call me back and we'll bring you in just to see. So I do that. In the bath, the contractions are starting to get, like, more intense. They were kind of slowing down, but I did have another 6 in, like, an hour exactly. So I called her back and told her that, and at first she didn't think I meant that I had another 6 in an hour, and she was like, oh, you're fine. And then I was like, even though I had another 6 in an hour? And she was like, oh, you did? And I was like, yeah. It was, like, right at an hour was the 6th one. And she was like, okay, come in just to see. Like, it's probably nothing, but, like, just come in, we'll check and see. So my husband helped me out of the bath. We got ready to go, and I was like, maybe just, like, in case, bring, like, a hospital bag. We hadn't had one packed at that time, so he literally just grabbed, like, underwear, leggings, and a t-shirt for me and put it in a bag, and we just went to the hospital. We were not taking it serious at all. We thought we would go there, they would, like, laugh at us and send us home, basically. So on the way to the hospital, I called my dad And at the time, we were living in California. All my family is in Pennsylvania. So we called my dad, and I was like, hey, I'm going to the hospital. I had, like, contractions, told him the deal. And he's, like, laughing at me. He's like, yeah, there's no way that you're on the phone with me having a casual conversation like you are right now, and you're in labor. Like, there's no way. Like, you're being ridiculous, basically, is what he said. And I was like, okay, haha, yeah. So we get to the hospital, and I remember on the way to the hospital, there was these speed bumps, like 5 minutes before you get there. I had her at UCSD, and the fucking speed bumps were like, oh my God. I, like, wanted the speed bumps to just go away because they were, like, ruining my life at the time. Anyway, so we get there, we park, I'm walking in, and we have to, like, I remember there was a couple times where, like, the contractions were bad enough that I had to, like, stop walking and, like, gather my breath and, like, keep going. So we get in, they check us into a room, and they're like, okay, we're just gonna, like, you know, monitor your contractions. They hook me up to the monitor thing, they put the little band around my belly, and then they're looking at the screen. They can see me having a contraction, and they can see my face not really moving. And the nurse is like, did you just feel that contraction? I'm like, yep, I did. And she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, it, honestly, for me, it didn't hurt. Like, I felt it, but it wasn't like, I don't know, like, I feel like in movies and, like, whatever, like, they make labor seem like complete hell. Like, the worst pain you could ever experience in your entire life, like, could even wrap your head around. And I just didn't feel it like that. And I don't know if that's just how my labor went, or if that's my pain tolerance, or if it's a combination of both, or whatever. But because of that, I wasn't taking myself as seriously as maybe I should have. So, so they're monitoring my contractions, and then they're waiting for a midwife to get there. She comes in, and she's like, okay, I'm just gonna, like, check to see if you're dilated at all. And so I'm like, okay. So that fucking hurt. I don't know what they do, but she basically, like, stuck her hand up there or something. That fucking hurt. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, that, I was like, holy shit, I don't know if I can do this if this is what it's gonna feel like. You know what I mean? But she was basically like, yeah, so you're gonna have a baby today. And me and my husband were like, okay. She was like, yeah, we're gonna check you in. We're gonna get you to, like, an actual delivery room. You're already 4 centimeters dilated. And I was like, oh, all right. So I'm, like, halfway there, basically, already. So they got me into a different room, put me in a hospital gown and everything. I'm a little bit thrown out of my element because I honestly, in my honest heart of hearts, did not think that they were going to say that. I thought they were going to send me home and I was going to have a couple more weeks. Like, I had just got her nursery to get together like 2 days before that. Like, I went into, like, crazy nesting mode, and that should have been my, like, tell that it was coming soon. But yeah, it was definitely, like, a wake-up call kind of deal. And another thing was, this was on a Saturday. On that following Tuesday was supposed to be my third ultrasound that I'd had during my pregnancy, and it was supposed to be, like, the one that cleared me to have her in the birthing center at the hospital there. And because I didn't make it to that ultrasound, and because she was under fetal distress, they weren't letting me deliver her in the birthing center, so that was kind of like a letdown. You know, like when you have a birth plan, you like really want it to go that way, and then like they're basically telling me that like that can't happen, and I'm like, okay. So that part was fine. Like you get over it. You have to you have to adapt. Like that's just what it is. And obviously I wanted to do like whatever was gonna be best for her. Like she was under distress, I was worried, so they brought me up and they were like, okay, we're gonna like let this, they knew I wanted like no medication, I didn't want pain medication, I wanted to be fully present for her entire birth, and I didn't, like I had done so much research on everything beforehand. That's why I went the midwife route. That's why I didn't have excessive ultrasounds. I don't trust them. I know it's like a non-threatening type of radiation, but it's fucking radiation. And they haven't been around long enough to really know what kind of side effects that they could possibly present later on in life. So I didn't want like Pitocin or anything because I didn't want that, like that, and everything that a mom gets in her bloodstream goes to the baby. That doesn't just automatically stop when you're in labor. So I don't know why they tell you all through your pregnancy, don't have this medication, don't have this medication, don't take this for flus and colds, whatever, and then all of a sudden when you're in labor, all of that goes out the window, and then they're like, let's pump you full of drugs, it'll be fine. Yeah, I'm not buying that, so I didn't want to do that. I'm not judging anyone else. I mean, I kind of am, but it's your life. It's not mine. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You can do what you're going to do. That's fine. I'm sure I'll get shit for that, but I'm not going to lie about my feelings either. Anyway, so I had her, they had me hooked up to all the monitors and everything. I didn't want any of the medication. They put an IV in me for fluids, and I was like, what is that? And they could tell I was like a little paranoid. But I guess around 7 or 8 o'clock that night, we checked into to the hospital around like 5, I think. Maybe 5 or 6. So around like 7 or 8, my midwife comes in and she's like, listen, your water didn't break yet. I just said water, right? Oh, fuck, I didn't say that right. Okay. Anyway, she came in and she was basically like, your water didn't break yet, we're gonna have to manually break it. Because we don't know what's going on with her in your stomach. She's under distress, but we don't know what's going on. So your body's moving fast, but it's not moving quite fast enough, so we need to help it move along. So they broke my water manually, which was fine. I mean, it hurt, but it was just like the release of pressure, and then it was good. And then like maybe a half hour later, I see on the monitors that her heart rate keeps dipping, and I'm like pressing the button. I'm like, you guys know that this is happening. Like, I'm kind of freaking out right now. And they're like, yeah, it's fine, like blah blah blah. So another half hour goes by. It's probably like 9 o'clock at this point, and my midwife comes back in and she's like, okay, so they are gonna come in and they're gonna talk to you about a C-section. They don't want it to turn into an emergency C-section, so they're trying to be proactive, and they want to take her out before something happens, basically, where she like needs something right then and there, because your body is going fast, but it's not moving fast enough with not knowing what's going on with her. So my heart just like sinks to the floor. I did not want a C-section at all. I was terrified of it, honestly, especially knowing what happened with my mom. I had also a month before that, a friend of ours was pregnant, and shortly after she delivered, she passed away. And that was very on the forefront of my mind. So when they started saying surgery, I started thinking the worst, and I didn't want anyone else to know that I was thinking that, but that's what was going through my head. I was starting to think, what if I have this child and my husband has to raise her by himself? What if something happens to me? I don't even think I told him that at the time because I didn't want him to worry. He was sick at the hospital. I am someone that keeps everything inside. I'm trying to get better about that and express my feelings more. But I'm very much the type of person that if someone needs someone to be strong for them, I am that person. Anyway, so they came in and I had to sign all these papers for C-section, even though I did not want to do that. But obviously when you're in a situation like that, you want to do what's best for your child. You don't want something happening to them to be on you. So, feeling like I had no choice, I signed the papers. They started wheeling me into the OR, alone. My husband is not good with blood. He was already nauseous and sick, so he was like, I'm gonna just make things worse. So, are you okay to do this by yourself? And I'm like, yeah. So, we go into the OR. On the way to the OR, I start having really intense contractions. But again, being me, I'm not letting that show. I kind of feel like pressure going down. Yeah. 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 I feel pressure. And really intense contractions. I probably have like 3 on the way to the OR, getting wheeled there. I didn't say anything. And then when we get into the OR, the anesthesiologist comes in and he's talking to me. He has me sit up and he has the syringe in his hand. He's swabbing, he's like cleaning my back, ready to give me this anesthesia. And literally, he has like his hand on my back, needle in his other hand, ready to pierce my skin with it. And I'm like, no. And he's like, is everything okay? And I'm like, no, because she's coming out right now. I'm gonna push her out right now. Like, I just knew what was happening. That's it. And then everyone was like, oh, okay, do you want us to grab your husband? And I'm like, yes, please. And they're like, okay, we're gonna go get the midwife. It's like fucking crazy in this OR, tiny little room. There's like 9 million people in there because they're telling me that like the pediatric nurses are gonna have to see her as soon as she's born because they don't know what's going on, so she's probably gonna have to be seen by them before I get to see her. And that was heartbreaking in itself too. And so I'm sitting there, the midwife comes in, she's telling me basically like everything else is like a blur, and I just see like me and my midwife in front of me, and then I see my husband's feet through all the other sea of people. And as soon as I saw his feet, I felt like calm, like this could happen now. And I'm focused on my midwife. My husband's hand is on the back of my head, and she's telling me, you need to push like you've never pushed. Your daughter's life might depend on this, okay? So she's like, you need to get her out as fast as you can because we don't know what's going on with her in there. So I'm like, okay, game on. I have to sign something real quick for them to use a vacuum because they like needed to get her out like ASAP. Like there could be like, they didn't know what was going on, so they needed to get her out like super fast. So she's telling me to like push with all I have. So I do maybe like 3, maybe 4 pushes, and she's out. And I see her, and she's pale, she's not crying, she's so small. My first instinct when I had her was to put a wall up. It wasn't love, it wasn't happiness, it was put a wall up to protect yourself because you might have just delivered a stillborn baby. That was my first thought when I delivered her. They took her behind me where I couldn't see. It was over my left shoulder, working on her. It felt like forever. My midwife, I think, could tell that I was in like some kind of zone, and she's telling me, she's like, okay, we need you to focus again on me. We need to deliver your placenta. She's like, one more push. So I don't even remember pushing that. It was just, I was numb at that point. Not for real numb, like just like numb. I deliver my placenta. She shows me that and everything, and I finally hear her cry, and it was like the hugest relief of my life, probably. So they were about to take her they said they have to take her to the NICU, and they said, do you want to hold her for a second first? And I was like, yes, because like my birth plan was like deliver her and have skin to skin and all that, and I didn't get to do that. So at the very least, she was placed on my chest for literally like 3 seconds, and then they took her to the NICU. And I didn't see her again for a couple hours. I know, Bean. I
still love my doctor.
Yes. So, NICU, I'm gonna end the video there because she's up. I don't want to go on with this forever, but I'm gonna just put this up unedited like this. I'll talk in a different video about the NICU experience because that was a whole other thing, and like after her birth and stuff. And I know I've said some things in here that are not popular opinion, and I'm probably gonna get shit for, but please just, before you write any comments or come at me with your own shit, think of how I felt and how this was to get out, okay? Because I'm telling this because I want other moms that can find themselves in the position that I did maybe to not feel so alone and to paint a different picture of birth, because not all of them are the same. And not everyone is coming from the same, like, with wholehearted trust in the medical field. So this is for moms like myself who can relate to any of what I said, and if I offended you, I'm sorry, but this is my truth.